All right, here we are. It's just one past the hour, which is two, and I think that is my cue to get started on the webinar. Thank you for joining us. This is the MachineMetrics webinar series. Today's session is entitled "The Power of Integrating Machine Metrics and ERP." It's great to have all of you joining. We've got people signing in all over the world, and we're grateful for your presence. Um, I'm just gonna I'm your MC today, Graham Immerman. For those of you that have been with me for some time here, just past my 8th year here at MachineMetrics. Not only am I your long-term MachineMetrics webinar MC, but I am also the Chief Revenue Officer here at MachineMetrics. So I oversee the sales, marketing, and business development teams. It's been a glorious time, since we started just a small office here in Northampton, Massachusetts. Today, we are the world leader in production monitoring technology. We have customers on every continent outside of, I believe, Antarctica, because I don't think there's really any manufacturing there. And I make that joke every time. And if you're sick of it, too bad. Um, you're going to have to deal with it every time. At least until somebody gets me a customer there so I can stop. I am fortunate to be joined by two exceptional people today. We've got Rutherford Wilson here, who's our Chief Product Officer. He just waved at you guys. Say hey to Rutherford. And we're also joined by a much cooler individual than both Rutherford and myself, Ephraim Escobar, and he is the general manager of ABACORP, a MachineMetrics customer. Welcome, Ephraim.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. All right. So we've got a tight agenda today. We're going to talk a bit about, some theology, if you will, if your religion is manufacturing. And, we're going to dive into sort of why, machine monitoring is no longer really enough for manufacturers. And, I think many of you probably have discovered and even experienced this for yourselves, that, the market has shifted and changed as the needs of manufacturers and technology has changed as well. We're also we're gonna do a fireside chat with Ephraim, and he's gonna share a bit about his experience, how he got to MachineMetrics, the goals of ABACORP, and we're gonna dive into some of his use cases and needs, and specifically around ERP integration, which is what we're really here to talk about today. And then we're gonna do a open Q&A session where all of you can ask any questions you want. Whether it's about myself, about our business, about Ephraim's business, you name it. No question too out of bounds, but keep it respectful. Before we get started, though, we just have a couple quick announcements. For those of you that I'm sure are wondering, rest assured, this webinar is being recorded. So all of you will receive a recording in the horrific event that you need to leave early. I can't imagine there's something more important, but if there is, you will get a recording. So you can always watch it. Or if you just felt like you needed to see it again because it was that exciting, which I also can understand. You can watch as many times as you want after. Secondly, questions. We love them. That doesn't mean we'll respond to them right away, but they will be there, and we will try to get to all of them. So you can either drop them into the chat of the Zoom, and I do encourage you all to chat. There is a chat section there, and you can talk amongst yourselves, or just ask questions along the way. There is also a Q&A section within the Zoom navigation. And our moderator, Henry, thank you, Henry, will take those. He'll either answer them in real time, or he may save your question for us when we get to the Q&A. If the virtual versions of ourselves are not exciting enough to you, you can rest assured that you will be able to meet us in person, because the trade show circuit is heating up. And so we have some awesome trade shows coming up that you can meet MachineMetrics team members, celebrities like Rutherford, or get demos of the product. We're hitting up PMTS in Cleveland. Go Cavs, April 1st through 3rd. You can come find us in booth, I don't know, there's a number behind my screen, but it's there. And you can meet us at that booth. We've also got Automate coming up in Detroit, May 12th through 15th, and East Tech at the same time. That's a crazy double dip event that we're going to be doing there. So half the team will be in lovely Springfield, Massachusetts, while the rest of us will be at Automate. So if you're feeling excited, you're going to be at any of those events. If you want to learn more about MachineMetrics, I do urge you to say hey to us while you're at the shows. Now, enough from me. I'm going to pass the mic to Rutherford, who's going to share a little bit about why we're here today. And then we'll pick up the next section when he's completed. So Rutherford, the mic is yours.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Graham, and thank you for a wonderful introduction. Many of you who have seen us before, we have talked about, why, digital transformations, in particular, MES solutions have failed. And we've cited this number from McKinsey, but there's actually a number of other studies that are more recent than this that have talked about, how the difficulty of the process of doing a digital transformation in the manufacturing system has not started off well. And 70% of these initiatives fail to reach their goals. And so we really started this process of embarking about rethinking digital transformation, how to really kind of understand it at its core nature and try to solve some of the basic problems that we have. And and one of the realizations that we just discovered is, there's all these legacy MESs that have been around for decades. And at the core root of it, they try to solve every problem. They try to put in a single challenge everything that's there. And if we think about it, the more functionality that you add to any kind of software system, the level of configuration and that is needed to meet the needs of a very, very unique set of manufacturers grows exponentially. And that's one of the reasons why they fail. I mean, that's in addition to the excessive addition of the excessive need of manual data entry, the prolonged implementations. It takes forever and a day to do this. And hopefully Ephraim will share his experience with MachineMetrics. But also they try to solve things that may be overly ambitious to get started. And so in many cases, we know that an MES is a concept more than a software system. It hasn't evolved to that yet. And so we really try to focus in on, focusing on what we call the core four. You can go to the next slide. And that really is just looking at the processes that every manufacturer in the discrete world has to do in some way. And those end up being, managing your work orders, optimizing your scheduling, getting the feedback that you need that is related to both OEE and a whole host of other production analytics that you need to do, in addition to downtime tracking. And it's not just tracking, when the machines are down, but understanding the whys they're down. And so what we do at MachineMetrics is we sort of rethought this whole process. We identified these core set of functionalities that we need to get right. And they actually end up being 4 pieces of functionalities that have limited amount of configuration across the board for many of the mid-market, or even up to the enterprise discrete manufacturers. And so we wanted to create a system that integrates all these features together, as well as being able to simplify the process so we can expedite the time to value. And so when we think about rethinking digital transformation, we know that MES is a concept. It's not a software system. It's an idea that you need to achieve. And then when you have this baseline foundation associated with your product, then you can start identifying, well, what are the next areas where you can start to develop on? Next slide, please. And so we believe that you want to monitor your production, not just your machines. That's why machine monitoring is not enough. And this approach starts that we are following. We believe that it addresses your key pain points to simplify your operations. We want to simplify your resource utilization. We want to, understand downtimes and reduce them with actionable insights. And most importantly is fast time to value. We want to make sure that your deployment doesn't take months upon months to get done, but takes, just a few weeks. And that way you can start to understand, where your benefits are from the software that we delivered, and then start to analyze where the other areas you want to expand into. And also, we believe that it's not just about operators. It's about operators, it's about planners, it's about executives, giving them the tools that help them make the right decisions using real-time data to achieve that level. And so we believe that in their view, one more slide, please. I think there's one more slide. We believe that can be achieved by introducing an easy way to connect to your ERP. And so one of the things that we started working on is a lot of context happens with machine monitoring. Machine monitoring is not enough, but it's still it's a key ingredient to understanding what is happening. But when you connect that information with the work context coming from your ERP, that enables all these other core 4 functionalities to happen. And so we built very easy to deploy connectors for Java Squared, which we'll be talking about today. That's what ABACORP is using, Epicor Kinetic and Epicor 10, Infor Visual, Infor XA, and we're currently working on a number of other Infor products, SAP and Dynamics 365. And so by simplifying that process, so within a matter of days, you can get your ERP context and bind that to the real-time data that's coming from our machine monitoring system. You're really monitoring production at this point. And that unlocks a lot of different opportunities and advantages for customers that use this approach. So that's how we think about the world, and that's the sort of the way that we're moving down. And some of the things we're doing in addition to that, maybe we'll have another webinar to talk about the future of what we see is going to be valuable beyond the core 4. But this is where we believe that where some of the MESs, they miss this aspect of real-time data as being a key part of it, and they sort of miss the opportunity to integrate all of these things together in a very easy way that delivers that fast time to value. And so hopefully during our Q&A session, you can ask Ephraim some of the questions about his experience with our process. Next slide.
Thanks, Rutherford. We appreciate that. To Rutherford's point, right? When you're just monitoring machines, right, you're really not getting the full story, right? What customers want to do is, they want to understand, where they are at in their current production cycles, right? To understand that it's more than just the machines, right? It's about your business. The goal is to get more product to customers on time, right? And to do it as efficiently and effectively as possible, given the resources you have. And your machines are really just a piece of that, right? To Rutherford's point, the mid-market and companies like ABACORP, right? I think in some ways have sort of been seen as out of scope for MES in a lot of ways because, systems were not designed to be easy enough for them to deploy or to implement, or didn't meet their unique needs in enough critical ways. And so we're here with Ephraim, who's as I mentioned before, the general manager of ABACORP, and he's gonna tell us a little bit about their business, and then we're just gonna turn off the slides and we're going to dive into sort of like a live Q&A with Ephraim so he can tell a little bit about his story, about their quote unquote machine monitoring and MES journey, and what that has been like for them, and successes, failures, hardships, and so on and so forth. So Ephraim, welcome, first of all.
Thank you. Thank you for having
Always
me.
grateful to have you on a webinar. I've now known you for, a pretty good amount of time, but really less than 6 months, which I'd like to say is pretty darn good for us getting up and running. But just to kick things off, would you mind telling us all a little bit about ABACORP?
Yeah, no problem. So as it states there we're celebrating our 30 years. I'm new to the company. I've been here close to 2 years. I was brought on board to basically, solve some issues. And we're a machine shop that specializes in a lot of different manufacturing. We have lathes, we have mills, we have welding, and we have pretty much a lot of different diverse processes under our roof. And so we have 22 machines, about close to 50 employees. And we've now recently expanded in the last couple of years and moved to Moore Park. I know it says Chatsworth there. That's originally where we were, and now we've moved to Moore Park and are expanding every day. So we're actually in the process of looking at another expansion. So that's why I think all this pretty much came to a head.
That's awesome. And, because, I was the originator of the MachineMetrics marketing system now run by Henry. Thank you, Henry, for putting all this stuff together. But I can't help but keep my eyes on when companies come to MachineMetrics. What prompted this initial search? Was there some point of inception for this journey for you guys?
Yeah, funny enough, when I came on board with ABACORP, I was tasked with basically trying to find solutions to issues and basically mainly capturing the tribal knowledge that we've gained over 30 years, right? So there's a tremendous amount of really good tribal knowledge, but it's just that. So I was tasked with systemizing things and capturing that. And in doing that, we were looking at toolware, and I was creating some procedures and whatnot. And I started researching online, and I came across a really good article regarding toolware. And at the bottom of it said, brought to you by MachineMetrics. And I was like, wait a minute, what is MachineMetrics? And so I decided to dive a little deeper into that and realize that it was another machine monitoring system. And I said, well, I've heard of machine monitoring. In my old place that I used to work, we had some digital software and whatnot, not as powerful as this. But I had been wanting us to get digital with our outlook on the machine so we could have more visual on the machines. And so when I decided to look a little deeper into machine metrics, I was surprised not just about the fact that it was machine monitoring, but how it actually collected the data. And that's what intrigued me, because I had come across a lot of systems that just had your spindles running, your spindles not. Here's a digital, here's your machine. You don't have to walk out there and look at it. You can see it from your desk. But the tools and utilization that came from MachineMetrics definitely intrigued me, because I saw that we could grow with the system, not just become digital, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I do know what you mean. And it's funny. As I mentioned before, I just celebrated my 8th MachineMetrics anniversary, which is essentially a lifetime. I was, over the years at MachineMetrics, the number one thing that we hear from customers is, does this integrate with my ERP? And I think, a lot of people don't necessarily know what that means. But I heard it with you, right? Because, when we started working with you guys and having discussions, one of the first things that you guys mentioned was, well, does this integrate with our ERP? And we have, we're hyper nerds, obviously, because we, work in MachineMetrics, and we have all this AI and call recording software that analyze all this technology. And it's the number one thing we get asked by customers. But I think a lot of companies don't necessarily know why that's important, but you did. And I'd love to maybe hear a little more about, why that question was asked early on. But why was it a need for whatever software that you wanted to use for this to integrate with your ERP system?
I guess to put it simply is for accuracy of data, right? These ERPs, we revolve our business around them, and they're they're designed to work well in what I like to call a perfect world, right? And so under a perfect world situation, people enter data correctly. Everybody does what they're supposed to do. They populate the ERP properly. They use the right fields, and then everything just works magically well. The problem is that's not really what happens, right? We all know that everybody uses their ERP differently. There's still things of job boss that I still don't understand. And the accuracy of data is what I was looking for, because unfortunately, when the data starts coming in inaccurate or not on time, then that really does hold our ERP down. And so that was actually the whole point of the machine monitoring, is I wanted to find a way to streamline that communication to our ERP to make our ERP more effective.
And how was that like before that, we got to obviously the end state, like how did that impact business? Did you guys experience any challenges by sort of having that manual process and,
Yeah, it impacted in a great way. So here I said something, I'm on one breath, I'm saying that we rely heavily on our ERP and we, run our business through it. And on another, some of our managers just didn't trust the system, because they said, well, that's not right. Anybody could have entered that, or look, it doesn't make sense, or look, there's a double entry, or look, there's no entries. And so what it caused us was, here we are revolving our business around an ERP, and at the same time, we're pushing further into a pen and paper method and manually walking the floor to try to understand what's happening because we know we can't trust our ERP, right?
Mm.
It's not that there's anything wrong with the ERP, it's just how we're getting the data.
Yeah, totally agreed. I think this is a classic misconception sometimes, and I think, I mean, I wish we could just do like a quick live poll of like how many people have like just upgraded their ERP because they thought that that was going to solve the problem, but like, but it doesn't, right? Like the endless upgrade, to upgrade, to upgrade, to upgrade. It's like it's not really, yeah, yeah, new bells and whistles, new features, right? Of course, but like the problem really comes down to like the calculations, the data itself that drives the business and the decision making being off. And when it's done in a manual way, I think you said it really well. It tends to be done, it's lagging indicators. And did that, like from a business side, I mean, were there any challenges that you experienced? Was, obviously, listen, I mean, every manufacturer I think has their challenges. So this wouldn't be nothing, this isn't a knock on you or anybody else, but any when it came to like efficiency or, trouble making specific decisions, on-time delivery, were there any specific challenges you guys experienced that were, that stood out to you?
Yeah, I think it caused because like I said, because we didn't really feel like we really had a good scope on through the system. We would have to go back to pen and paper to manually walking the floor, try to figure out what's going on. And that would inherently do is it would cause us to work harder, right? So we're
Mm,
always meeting our due dates, but we're having to work harder to do it because people are working extra, they're working harder, they're running around like crazy, trying to figure out what's going on. We're throwing more resources at it, more managers, just trying to just understand what's happening. Where I looked at the machines and I said, well, those machines are telling us every second of the day what's happening. We just need a portal so that we could translate what's coming off those machines to tell us what's happening so we don't have to run out there every second, try to figure out what's going on. And I guess that's why we started looking at it a little bit more seriously.
yeah, and speaking of data, I just couldn't help myself. I was like, how did you really find this? Unfortunately, because we are a data-driven company, we as well as you, we had that information. I saw, you guys came inbound to us through organic search. Great job, Henry. So looks like you were looking for answers, right?
I was, yeah,
How
yeah.
many of us are doing that now, right? Like that's how we get information, right? Is,
You
hey,
know,
it's all
I'll tell you, Graham, like, it's the way I like to say it, and I think one other competitor of ours that we work with, he's interested in MachineMetrics, and he's like, hey, how'd you come across this thing? And I said, when I first came on board with ABACORP and I started learning about the company and the owners and just the immense amount of talent that exists under one roof, I knew that intelligence alone was not going to solve our problems, right? Because we have some very smart people in the building. So I thought to myself, if between all this knowledge of manufacturing and experience, we're still challenged and we're still having these issues, there has to be the approach I have to take is more of an out of the box approach at looking at how to solve some of our issues, right? Because it's not that someone hasn't been able to think of it because obviously they thought of everything they can to throw at this to fix it. So I said, we need to kind of take a different approach so that way we can find a different way of solving it. Because it's like, the definition of insanity is trying to do the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. So it's
totally.
like we have to kind of take ourselves away and reinvent ourselves in order to be able to look at things from a different perspective.
It's really I love that insight, and it is interesting, because I do think that I come from a different vertical. I came into my career in the early days of a different digital transformation, which was marketing, and it was sort of similar. Everyone's using sort of like magazine ads, right, and billboards, and these unmeasured tools, and then obviously the internet, right, and then everything changed. But there is something unique about manufacturing. I think it's just the vertical of people who make things, right? And when you make things, sometimes there is a question like, do I make this also, right? And I think over time there's been a lot of manufacturers that maybe either tried to build their own software or even have sort of that thought that like, hey, like I should try to build this or get a partner to build this. But I think to your point, you know, part of the core four is that, well, there's a lot of things that we all do very similar, right? And the goal is to sort of help us not have to overthink this, get us to where we need to go to solve our problem. And I guess when you clearly you did your homework, right? You were, I can't imagine we were the only company that comes up on your Google search.
No.
And so, what were some of those key factors that influenced, you guys to, choose, say, MachineMetrics? And no need to name any other companies. You're welcome to,
Yeah,
but
no, I won't name any other companies. I did do my research. I did look at quite a few. And like I said, from the beginning, I think the main driver on what I was looking for is how are these machine monitoring companies getting the data? What is it, right? What is, because in the past, I had worked with in a previous company where I did the same thing. I put in digital screens, and we were able to look at, it was a heat treating company, so it was furnaces, and I was
Mm,
able to look at temperatures and whatnot. But it was just that, right? It was just, there was a sensor hooked up to a system. The system had had an interface, and we could see what was going on. It was live, but it wasn't interactive, right? It was just, it's either working or it's not. And
yeah,
so when I looked at some of these systems, there was the very traditional, well, spindle's running and spindle's not, right? So they attach a sensor to the spindle, it's either running or not. And I said, well, that's great. I said, that's kind of what I used to have, but I want something a little bit more deeper. I want to know what's happening on the machine that will help me engage with not just the machine, but the operator as well and what's going on in our production floor. And then when I came across your system, I realized that instead of just being hooked up to a on and off switch at the back of the machine, or a hooked up to the spindle, see if it's running or it's not running, all of a sudden there was a link to the back of the controller, to the machine itself, sensors, everything that came along with it, that now is going to give us this invaluable data about what's happening every second of the day with that machine. See, that machine is giving us information. We just never had a way to capture it. Right. And
yeah,
if you're standing at the, like, let's say on a Haas, you're standing at the Haas pendant, you can see alarms, you can see spindle pressure, you can see a lot of things. But from a management standpoint of view, when I'm in the middle of a production meeting and I want to know, hey, what's going on? There's no way to really look at any of that. At least there's no record of it. And so with MachineMetrics, I realized very quickly that there could be a map and a record of all that. So I could go back and really not just analyze our data, but also be able to figure out when and what happened and how it happened and to who it happened. And so
mm,
that's, I think, was the main driving to go in MachineMetrics. I knew that with a system like that, we could grow with it. It wasn't just about getting a digital screen in somebody's office and now it's fancy and we can look at what our machine is on or off, but it was actually now more going to be interactive. And that's what I was looking for, because I felt that could be sky's the limit for us.
yeah. And that really, we're starting to scratch the machine monitoring is not enough itch, and I think, I bet there's a lot of people on this webinar that have had that feeling. It's like, all right, we're connecting the machines, we're getting uptime, we're getting downtime, maybe some basic analytics, but I think the more, I think, critical, question discussion that we're seeing is, when you start connecting systems with, like, say, MachineMetrics with the machines themselves, you're getting more operational context, and the ERP, like, what else does that unlock, right? And I think one thing that we uncovered, at least, during, that decision-making process, which I know we did a trial, and, we really gave you guys a chance to prove, and I'd love to hear, more about what that experience was like for you guys. But was that other side, which was like, well, we certainly don't want, operators doing, multiple different things, right? And I know that, that was a problem that we saw, when we were looking at, operator and experience. A lot of machine monitoring companies sort of required you to do a separate experience over here, and then, you're sort of job tracking over there. And like for you guys, like, how did, the decision to make MachineMetrics come, with that thought in mind about what daily production flow looks like and how it might be better if they were connected?
So the integration part was a big driver for us, right? Because as it was, we have this separate system in terms of on top of our paperwork, right? We have paperwork, they have timesheets, labor tickets that they fill. Then they have to go on a kiosk that's strategically placed through the shop, and they have to enter their data. That originally was where I first saw the issue, right? I said, you're disconnected. You're working your machine, you're in it to win it. Then you walk away, and then you're 10 minutes later entering data on some other computer that now you're gone. You're not connected anymore. And so I felt that that was the first place where we were going to have our issues in terms of inaccurate data, and that's what was happening. And then secondly, I said, you bring on another system on top of that, and now they have to go here and go there and do all that. I said, that's not going to work. I said, we need it all in one place, and I need it at the station. I need it at their machine. I need it right there, right in their face, so that they know what's going on, and not just at the end of the day, how many parts did I make and what happened with my machine, but as it's happening. And so having the tablets, that was one thing that Kim and I were 100%, she's the CEO of the company, 100% on, is like, we have to have tablets at the station, and we have to have it all in one place. So that way, now that they're, working and everything's there, they just do all their work and they just focus on being machinists. They don't have to be data entry guys anymore. They don't have to bust out their calculator and do all their calculations at the end of the day to try to figure out what happened and how many parts, and somebody took them to shipping, so now they can't count their parts. But now with the system being there, it's all happening live. It's easy for them. They just, at the end, they sign out. It prompts them to what they made. They check it. Okay, that's what I made. Submit. Done.
Wow. So you guys actually, and obviously I know what happened, but for those of you that hear what Efren, are you saying that you actually replaced the labor ticket flow that you were currently using with your ERP with MachineMetrics?
Yes.
Wow, that's really
100%.
cool.
100%. And that kiosk is the only thing they use that kiosk now is to log into their shifts.
That's really cool.
And there's no long line at the kiosk anymore, right? With their labor tickets saying, oh, my turn, I got to put in my stuff. You got 5 people behind you trying to get out of here. Now they all do it at the machines, and then you just see all the machines just dropping off, and it's amazing.
Does anyone else have a long line at the end of the shift waiting for people to enter? If you do, throw it in the chat. I'd love to know the longest time, if you're an operator, longest time you've waited in line to enter your parts into the kiosk. What a pain in the ass. I'd really love to hear that. And your trial experience, obviously, we like to, put up or shut up. We have a lot, I think we have tons of customers that, start using MachineMetrics that, either do a pilot or a trial. Regardless, what was that experience like for you guys? Was it hard? Was it long? What did you learn during that process? Just any feedback on what your evaluation, was like for you.
So part of the driver of us doing the trial was because it's almost kind of like, sometimes some things are too good to be true. Probably they're not. And so I said, well, maybe the marketing's pretty good, and I really looked at this thoroughly, and it looks like it's going to work really well, but will it? And will it work for us? It doesn't mean necessarily that MachineMetrics couldn't work, but will it work for us? And so being able to jump on a trial really made it very easy for us to just try it out and see what it would do, right? And that, I guess, was the main reason why it made things easier, because we were able to jump in with we didn't feel like we were on the hook, right? We could feel we could leave anytime. And then once we got started, we realized that there was also some inefficiencies on how we did things on our programs and how we had things set up and whatnot. And that did make it difficult in the beginning, but it made us also clean all that up so that everything would work seamlessly. So I'm actually thankful for that, because those were hidden things that we didn't even know, right? That were even down to how the M30 counters, here we are, preaching about having correct counts, but some of the M30 counters were incorrect, set in our own programs. So when we had MachineMetrics, we could actually see that and hey, how come this isn't counting right? And then we realize, oh, it's because the way we've set up our loops. And so at that point, we had to
Mm.
actually create procedures on properly inserting these counters so that way we could tick the machine counters properly, which would in turn tick the machine metric counters properly. And now the machine counters and the machine metrics counters were synchronized. So
Wow.
I love that because it really helped clean that part of it up. And I worked heavily with our program manager, Mark, to be able to clean all that up. And I loved every minute of that because it streamlined. You know, I'm a systems guy, so it streamlined our. It was yet another system for me that we were able to streamline. So that was, you know, check,
That's
another
really
one
awesome.
done. So yeah,
Oh
so
yeah. Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people on the call are, like really, probably leaning into that and be like, that would be very valuable for me.
oh
to
yeah,
and like so obviously, during our trial we got the machines connected. We tested out the ERP integration. Tell me a little bit about what first of all, what ERP do you guys have?
Job Boss 2.
And what was that like? What was the ERP integration experience like for you guys? I think a lot of people when they hear that they almost shudder a little bit. It's like a little scary. It's like,
It was a little scary because I thought to myself, if this doesn't work right, we're gonna have a nightmare inside, and it's gonna be a mess. And so I, obviously, as you know, the program champion, I took it upon myself. I said, well, I'm gonna check every single labor ticket. I'm gonna check every single entry, and because I'm expecting a mess. I'm not gonna lie. I'm expecting a mess, and I'm expecting issues. And I was pleasantly surprised how easily we were able to integrate within a matter of weeks. And
Mm,
I'm telling you, there were bugs, but they weren't as severe as I thought they would be. And the integration just, it's like everybody jumped on it, right? So the screens kind of changed when we went from like manual to like, obviously the integration part of it. So I had to work on training all three shifts on how to maneuver through that. And so that was the first task. And then I started analyzing tickets and then getting to the bottom of, hey, why this isn't coming in. And we found where there were bugs and we quickly eliminated that. We worked with your integration team on that, and they were like super on top of it, which I was happy because I mean, at one point I was like talking with one of them on the phone at like 8 o'clock at night from my house saying, hey, this isn't working right. Can we work on it? And he's like, sure, let's do it now. And so, not that, we expected that, but just the fact that they went out of their way to kind of just really make sure that everything we were taken care of. It was kind of a little bit of a long shot from what I'm used to with other things like our ERP. It's like, oh, submitted, support ticket. We'll get back to you whenever we can. And there's like 20,000 managers you got to get through to so you can still talk to somebody. With MachineMetrics, it was like people could just respond to us right away, and then there was different teams that were allocated for different areas, and everybody was responding, and it just felt like we were being treated like a customer.
yeah, but it always blushing moments. It does always feel good. I know that as a company, when we were all in a small room, 10 years ago, it always felt like every single call, we all heard it, but as we grow, right, I think there is a part of that that comes from company culture too. And, it's just, for me personally, at least to hear that we can still provide that level of exceptional support is, you know, a moment of pride for me personally.
Yeah, you should. We did feel taken care of, and I
No,
I did
we
appreciate that.
we really do appreciate that, Efren, and we did not pay Efren to be here, by the way.
No. You guys
Uh,
know I say it as it is, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, no, we really do appreciate it. And so like obviously you guys are just getting started. I mean, we're early in, right? But have you experienced any other like, benefits so far from using the software? Any other decisions that have been made? Whether it be, increases in various outputs or decreases in downtime or just general engagements or decision making.
yeah, I want to say all those things. Probably we could just talk about like, yeah, downtime is down, and we're able to see efficiency is growing and whatnot. I'm sure everybody is like, used to hearing those things. One thing that I do know that the system helped us with was your system has a workflow area to it.
Mm,
And as much as I would preach to our production floor about communication, 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 it was always difficult to achieve that. And we've achieved that through our workflows. We have certain workflows that go to certain that trigger maintenance, certain ones that trigger the myself, shop foreman, shop floorman, all kinds of things that get triggered. And
mm,
now instead of having my guys walk around the shop looking for people, it gets triggered, and then they have a manager within minutes at their machine. And so they can again focus on what they are doing, and they can put themselves together with saying, hey, I have an issue with my machine. I'm getting this alarm, or this offset isn't working, whatnot. And we can attack those issues real time instead of just, oh, well, I was looking at you for you and you were in a meeting and I went and knocked on your door and you were on a webinar and I couldn't talk to you. Right now
that's
it's just like I have a record of it. It comes through my phone, because I choose to have it text and on my watch, and then I also have it comes through my email. So it's like I know even when my night shift guys are having a problem, when I wake up in the morning, I go through that, and then I go and address those things. So when they come in the next shift, there's the following day, I fixed it already because I have
mm.
maintenance and other things to my disposal. So I want to say that the yes, the machine monitoring in terms of, collecting data has been accurate and all that, and we expected that, but just the increase in communication is really what has helped us.
It's all about transforming insights into action. And in the action that I just took, as I wrote down an awesome blog idea, which was just like the 10 most creative workflows, because there are some awesome workflows that I have seen. Dave Roberts, you come to mind right off the bat. He's in the chat right now. I'm sure he could come up with another of them. My favorite one I think I've ever seen is there was a customer that once pinged the Domino's API to automate pizza orders when they hit production targets. If any of you didn't know that, Domino's has an API, and yes, you can
That's really
integrate.
cool.
You could absolutely integrate that with MachineMetrics. That will be a different podcast, or maybe even we'll put that into the article. But obviously you've been using MachineMetrics, only for a short period of time. Have you has the product changed? Have you seen any improvements in it, even during that short period? Any, new feature releases, any, things that you're looking to incorporate or add as you continue to use the software?
In the short amount of time we've been using it, we have seen some updates. It's just more features, which is always kind of cool. Like we even through the integration part of it, the way that the operator was populated on the tablet in job, and then all of a sudden it was strategically moved where it was more convenient. So we didn't have to like swipe the button to see the operator. It was
Mm.
just on top. It's just little caveats like that, like that made things easier for us. So I've seen that. The one thing I think we're really excited about, at least I am, I know that, but we're still, still looking to explore that is that scheduling software that you guys have released. My mouth on waters every time I, hear about it because I just see that some of the challenges we have on our end. We have not jumped on that one yet, just because I think we have some system things that we need to fix on our end before we can try to use that, so that way we can use that effectively. And I think that's already the direction that we're going to be going very soon. But as of right now, that's, one of the things that we're possibly looking at upgrading to.
It is a juicy feature. For those of you that may not know what reference talking about, MachineMetrics, we released a dynamic scheduling module. So what we do is we pull your work orders and operations from your ERP, and then digitize your ability to gain, essentially track the status of those work orders, and then the feedback from the machines will update your estimated completion times, and give you the ability to make changes to your schedule on the fly, in a single location, a digital location, without your Excel spreadsheet or your whiteboard, which I'm 95 to 99% positive that almost all of you use to schedule work.
We're using it
Yeah,
right now.
yeah, guaranteed. It's funny that problem. I would venture to guess that scheduling may be the single biggest problem in manufacturing. But to your point, Ephraim, right, it's like how we schedule is, more complex than just, drag and drop and things. It's like, well, who needs what and when, and do we have the right information to do so? So we're, but it's a journey, right? And I think you guys
Yeah.
have started in a great place of, discovering, hey, this is where our current pain is. We're addressing it, and now you're on your way. One of the questions that came in, that I think I'll just sort of start maybe, answering some of the questions from the Q&A. And again, for those of you who are here, thank you all for joining us. We're going to do a little bit of the Q&A while we got here is, and I'm going to take some of these one by one, but any insights on, like the culture shift? Like, how do we get companies, customers, people on the factory floor? Obviously there's a change, what we do every day. Do you have any advice to other companies that are implementing this technology?
Yeah, I'll tell you, initially when we first introduced it, there was the whole Big Brother concept, like, oh, they're going to be watching me now. There's a tablet there. It must have a camera. They must be watching my every move. And I quickly shot that down. And the approach that I took with my operators was I told them, this system is not only designed for us to get accurate data, but it's also designed to give you a voice. I said, when you come in and you sign in on your shift at the day and you're supposed to expect it to be make 100 parts, and at the end of the day, for whatever happens, you make 50. Through our ERP, it just looks like half the day you just weren't being productive. With this system, now we're going to know that there was a tool change, or maybe a tool was unavailable, or maybe an first article got held up and there was downtime with that, or maybe there was a machine alarm that kept going off, or maybe you were changing tools more often than we expected them to be changed, and that's why things were moving a lot slower. And I said, that's going to give you guys the power to show what you're really doing on the shop floor. And it's not just for us to watch you, it's so you guys have a say, so that you guys can say, hey, this process isn't working for me, and that's why it's going slow. Hey, I'm having an issue. I need a communication tab so that I can get to you guys so that you can help me get through this. And so that's the approach that I took with everybody. And I think that that was the difference, because they um, they really took to it very quickly, and they said, okay, well, if it's like that, then I'm all for it, right? But it was always that kind of like, but we'll see, right? And so as time went along and I started kind of presenting at our morning meetings, production meetings, hey, this is what I'm seeing, and this is truly now what I see is going on the production floor. It really did raise spirits in the shop, because they're like, yeah, see, it isn't always my fault, right? Sometimes machines are down. Sometimes tools are not working right. Sometimes other things are happening that we're not accounting for when we're doing the whole quoting process. And so I think it created a two-way communication, which is what I preach, communication, for not just managers to use the system, but our operators to use the system. And they love it. They like it when they see new features coming out, and they're like, hey, that's really cool. We like how that works. This makes my job so much easier. I don't have to stand in line at the kiosk anymore. All those things, they like it because it helps them. And so that's how I kind of sold it to the shop floor, and they really embraced it.
I love that. And, I'm getting so many questions coming in, so obviously what you're saying is inspiring a lot of people with questions. This is a good one, and it's sort of gonna be a two-parter. I think, what do you say, to your manufacturers out there that are like, we all understand that this is unique economic times, right? There's a lot of fear, uncertainty, there's doubt, companies are, some companies are afraid. They don't know whether or not they should be continuing to invest. Should they be cutting costs? What do you say to a manufacturer like that? Do you think that it's still worth investing in this technology? I know I'm putting you on the spot a little bit on this question. And the question sort of is like a two-parter, which is more like, how long did it take for your company to get to value, with a product like this? I mean, do you think that you've achieved, enough value to say it was worth it already? I know you've only been a customer for a short period of time, but
Yeah, I guess the only way I could really answer that question would be to how I was able to sell it to the owners of the company. Because obviously it is an investment. And so it's like, okay, well, do we really need this? And do we really need to spend money in order to get accurate data or to collect data or whatnot. And one of the instances in our situation was, we had a gentleman that was walking around every hour on the hour collecting data, right? He was collecting, we call it the PACE report, and that got populated. It was developed by our COO. And it was basically an Excel Google Doc that kind of populated what's going on with the machines, efficiency, all that every hour on the hour. And when MachineMetrics came on board, we no longer needed that. And so what I did is I equated the amount of time that that particular manager spent on his day. So whether it's 2, 3 hours a day and versus what that cost is to us in terms of what it costs for MachineMetrics to do that around the clock, 7 days a week if we needed to. And it was just like, well, I mean, that gets paid just right there. And that doesn't even talk about all the other things that we're looking for machine monitoring. So for us in the end, that ended up being a no-brainer, because now that manager, whether it was him, whether it was me or anybody else, didn't have to walk around with a pen and paper trying to figure out what's going on for data that was only right probably 4 times a day.
Yeah.
Right? Because by the time that the other managers or anybody was looking at it, that was in the past, because we were looking at the end of the shift. And if there was issues, we knew about it later, after the fact. If there was trends, we knew about it after lunch. So we can never react, because next thing we know, shift's over, right? So now that we have a live view of our production floor, we see things as they're happening. And because of that, then that made it freed up managers to not have to chase data anymore. And now we could actually get to work and solve some problems.
Well, that's a perfect answer. For any of you that are feeling like, now is not the right time, I think, again, this is just in the days of analytics. My opinion, obviously, sounds like Ephraim's as well, is, hey, like, you always invest in automation and analytics, right? You always have to keep moving forward, right? Because somebody across the street is doing it, right? And in the end, the efficiency, the 2 most critical assets you have are your people, right? And getting the most out of them, right, is probably enough payback on its own. But then, your machines as well, right? And if we're not utilizing those assets, our top assets, to the greatest level, then we're already hurting on the investment side of the business.
Yeah, I think the key takeaway of that is, I get it. We're spending money to track things, but I've always said this is some of the hidden monsters in manufacturing are the things we don't track. There are things that people do on a daily basis. Hey, he does that. Well, why does he do that? Well, that's just how we've always done it. And it's like, okay, but that's like half his day. And it's like, well, yeah, but if he doesn't do it, who's going to do it? We need it. And it's just like, okay, but is there a better way? Right. And so by using automation and by using systems like this technology to kind of let the work being done for us, then now there's a big dollar value to that, because like I said, we don't know that we're not spending, we're losing money on that because we don't track it. And then all of a sudden, when this guy's got 2 hours a day free, then you never knew that you were losing that money because you were never tracking it to begin with. And when you start tracking things, you start figuring out that there's a lot of things you didn't realize you were wasting on.
Oh man, that's the best explanation you can possibly ask for people. If you were looking for one, there it is right there. It's like, in reality, it's like, you don't know what you can't measure. And so how do you know how to even efficiently cut costs to, if you don't really know, right, where the problems really are? I mean, there's some obvious things, right? But I think in reality, that's an agile business, right? Is one that has the data to make decisions. Efren, I'm getting a number of questions I'm going to have to do a real quick non-ABACORP related Q&A for. So I'm just going to go down a list fast.
Okay.
From anonymous attendee, how can MachineMetrics capture data from other operations that are not machines? The answer, yes. Yes. And we can schedule them and have job tracking for them. So whether it's assembly or deburr, MachineMetrics has 2 different paths. The first is we can sensor it up, and you can have essentially a connected station where we'll use, various sensors to track, essentially, cycle time, are we in operation or not? And the second is an operator or operator interface allows you to have operators start, stop jobs and track the status of work orders as it's tied to our schedule or an ERP. And that in many ways could just be like more of a lightweight terminal for operators. So those are two different ways that we can engage with non-machining operations outside of your standard machines. Questions coming from Eshwar. I know you, Eshwar. Hey, how's it going? Is it possible to do an integration of ERP using our Edge API integration as opposed to using the cloud to an on-premise hosted ERP? Believe it or not, our ERP integrations are actually already done on the Edge. So we use APIs to communicate to most ERPs, IFS included. So that's actually exactly how it would work already. So hopefully you got a good answer to that question. We're getting a lot of other questions about specific ERPs. Sightline, Dave, yes, reach out to us. If you have any other questions about an ERP, whether we have it out of the box or not, it's almost irrelevant to some extent because the truth is it's just about speed, right? We can build any ERP integration, but I do think it is helpful to have them out of the box. A bunch of our out-of-the-box connectors today are Epicor Kinetic, Infor Visual, Infor XA, Sightline, JobBoss Squared, Microsoft MSD 365. There's probably a bunch more that I don't have off the top of my head because I don't have the list right in front of me. But if you're questioning it, if you want to have more information on it, reach out to us and we will give you that information. Let's see. Did I get all of those questions? I think we got to all of them. And, considering that we're at 2:57, we've done a pretty damn good job. So I think this is right about the time where we're going to wrap things up. I just want to firstly thank Rutherford and I want to thank Ephraim for joining today. I want to thank everybody for being here for the MachineMetrics webinar series. I think our primary takeaways from today is like the world is changing fast and you need data and tools to be able to make changes to keep up with it, right? Even more important is to stay ahead, right? Companies like ABACORP and with leadership like Ephraim are doing that, right? And they're partnering with MachineMetrics to stay ahead in an ultra competitive world. And we're grateful to have partners like them too to make us better. If you have any questions about MachineMetrics, obviously you can reach out to us through the website, www.machinemetrics.com. I'm Graham at MachineMetrics. You can always email me directly. And just another thank you so much for Ephraim for being here and sharing such amazing insights with us. We are most grateful.
No problem, no problem. It's been a journey and I was happy to share it.
Awesome. All right. Well, that does it for today. Thank you all again. Keep your eyes open for the recording so you can watch this 10 more times. Just kidding. No, we really are grateful and we look forward to catching y'all next time or at the next event. So see y'all around.
Take care.